We all know that feeling, don't we? You work
Wow.
on something, maybe feel you've made progress, but there's still that little nagging doubt. What if it just comes back?
Right. And especially with things like hypnosis, there can sometimes be this um, almost a fear of poking the bear, a worry that looking too closely might actually reignite the problem.
Yeah, like walking on eggshells. But what if there was an approach that, well, actually tackles that head on,
Hmm.
where you actively test how strong the changes really are?
That's exactly where the idea of testing in conversational hypnosis becomes so interesting. It's incredibly powerful, but often, surprisingly, it gets overlooked.
Overlooked. How so?
Well, in, let's say, more traditional styles, there might be a reluctance, a sort of hesitation to revisit potentially tricky situations, kind of a let sleeping dogs lie approach.
Okay, let's unpack this then.
Yeah.
Because what we're really digging into today is why this testing piece, and not just, a quick check at the very end, but throughout the whole process, why that can be such a, well, a game changer. We're looking at the insights from Advanced Conversational Hypnosis trainer Virginie and how her focus on testing can lead to results that are much more solid, more lasting.
Exactly. So forget just crossing your fingers and hoping for the best. This is about actively making sure the change is robust.
And you're saying a key difference in conversational hypnosis is that testing isn't saved for the final minutes. It's woven in.
Absolutely. It's an integral part of the conversation right from the start, really. Think of it as constantly taking the temperature, checking if the shifts the client feels are actually taking root.
So rather than just assuming the work is done, you're actively verifying it as you go along. How does that actually, play out?
Well, imagine the client starts exploring their challenge and they begin accessing new feelings, new perspectives, new resources, we call them. Testing lets us check if that therapeutic progress is, well, real and stable.
Okay.
And it helps us find any of those remaining uh, knots, those deeper bits of the problem that might still be lurking.
That makes a lot of sense. So if someone says they feel calmer about something that used to stress them out, you wouldn't just nod and move on.
Not quite. The really important step is to connect that new feeling, that calm, directly back to the original issue. So if they say, I feel much more peaceful about my workload, we might ask something like, okay, and how does that peacefulness change how you think about tackling that big deadline we talked about?
Ah, right. Making sure the solution actually fits the problem. And Virginia Amir really highlights listening for those tiny hesitations, doesn't she? Those little buts.
Precisely. Those buts like, I feel better, but I still worry a bit about. They're gold dust, really. They're not failures.
Okay.
They're signals that something still needs a bit more attention. Instead of glossing over them, we see them as signposts.
So a hesitation isn't a bad sign. It's actually useful information guiding you where to explore next.
You got it. By tuning into those nuances, this ongoing testing actually nudges the client to go deeper, to find even more of their own internal resources, and to tackle those lingering bits head on.
And that's quite different from maybe only checking right at the end of a session where you might miss those subtle points.
Exactly. Those subtle points could be the very things that cause a wobble later on. Missing them means you might not get the truly lasting result.
Okay, that clarifies the testing throughout part. Now, let's shift to what Virginia Imir calls the crucial final test. This sounds like the real safeguard against relapse.
It really is. The main goal here is, quite simply, preventing relapse. The thinking behind it is pretty straightforward. If we don't test the change rigorously while we're working together,
Then life will definitely test it later.
precisely, and usually when the person feels least equipped to handle it, the advantage here is addressing potential weak spots while the client is still right there in that resourceful hypnotic state, whether it's face-to-face or online.
It's like preemptively troubleshooting. So how does Virginia Imir suggest doing this final testing? What does it look like?
She breaks it down into three main types. There's the emotional test, the situational or scenario test, and then the rather intriguing one, the ridiculous test.
Okay, let's start with emotional. What's the aim there?
The idea is to see if the client's new resources, the strengths they've found, are robust enough to handle the emotional triggers. These could be things identified early on or things that came up during the session.
Right. So sticking with the smoking example, if stress or arguments were big triggers.
Exactly. We need to test that. Virginie Imir suggests asking something like, okay, imagine you get home tonight, maybe you've had a really rough day, and then you find yourself in a disagreement with your partner. How do you see that playing out now?
You're getting them to mentally rehearse a challenging emotional scene.
And crucially, you're listening intently. Is there any hesitation? Any flicker of doubt? Or do they clearly describe navigating it without needing a cigarette?
And you can even ramp up the pressure.
Absolutely. Virginie Amir talks about escalating it. So maybe, okay, imagine that stressful day, the argument, and then you get some unexpected bad news on top of it all. How do things go then?
You're really testing the resilience under fire.
That's the goal, seeing if the internal resources hold up under significant emotional load. Then there's the second type, situational or scenario testing. How's that different?
This feels more about the specific places or times the problem used to show up. So for the smoker, maybe it's not just general stress, but that specific coffee break at work.
Exactly right. The context matters. So we might ask, imagine you're at work tomorrow. It's your usual break time. What happens? Or perhaps, picture waiting for the bus. It's late usually. You'd light up. What's different for you in that moment now?
Testing those automatic, habitual responses in specific situations.
Yes. And again, you might start small and then escalate.
Like, what if your usual smoking buddy joins you on that break and offers you one?
Exactly. Probing those specific contextual vulnerabilities. Which brings us to the third one, the one Virginie Imir calls a ridiculous test. That name certainly catches your attention.
It really does. What's the logic behind something ridiculous?
Well, the purpose is to push things to an absolute extreme. It's about seeing if the client's internal foundation is so strong, so solid, they could handle almost anything, even something totally bizarre.
Okay, give me an example. How ridiculous are we talking?
Oh, pretty out there sometimes. Like, what if someone offered you £1,000,000 to start smoking again? Or even, imagine aliens land and say the only way they'll leave Earth peacefully is if you go back to that old problem.
Oh, okay. So it's not about the scenario being realistic at all.
Not in the slightest. It's about the response. If someone can confidently, maybe even laughingly, dismiss these absurd propositions and stay true to their change.
It shows a really profound level of internal certainty and resourcefulness.
That's exactly it. Success in these crazy tests suggests a very deep, unwavering resilience. Now, a key question. What if the client does hesitate during any of these tests, ongoing or final?
According to Virginie Imir, that's the cue, right? The sign to immediately loop back into that hypnotic exploration. It means there's still a limiting belief or an unresolved piece hanging around.
Precisely. It's not a failure, it's just more information guiding the work. We haven't quite finished polishing that particular spot.
And the overall goal of all this testing, it's not about the practitioner convincing the client they're fixed.
No, quite the opposite, actually. The aim is for the client, through their solid, confident answers to these tests, even the ridiculous ones, to convince us, the practitioner, that they've truly got this, that the change is real and integrated for them.
That's a really important shift in dynamic. It puts the proof in their hands.
It empowers them, reinforces their achievement. And as Virginie Imir really emphasizes, the payoffs for using testing this thoroughly are huge.
Yeah, she points out several key benefits, doesn't she? Like making sure you address all the different facets of a problem.
Getting all the layers and strengthening those resources they find during the session.
Right, making them more robust. And crucially, helping avoid repeat sessions or, worse, client relapses down the line.
Which ultimately gives both the client and the practitioner much more certainty in the results.
Absolutely. And it feels like this proactive approach, directly engaging with potential future hurdles, is such a contrast to maybe some older ideas where you might shy away from mentioning triggers, scared you'll, set something off again.
Exactly. This is about building confidence and ensuring stability, not avoiding potential discomfort. It's about building something truly resilient.
So wrapping up our deep dive today, drawing on Virginie Imir's work, it's really clear that testing both woven throughout and as a final check isn't just a nice-to-have in conversational hypnosis. It seems pretty essential for creating change that actually lasts.
It moves way beyond just hoping things will be okay and actively works to ensure they will be by stress testing the new resources against potential future challenges.
It definitely offers a much more robust framework.
And maybe a thought for you listening. Consider how you could apply a similar principle in your own life. When you're working on a change, how could you mentally test yourself against different scenarios? Imagine facing triggers and rehearse your new desired response. It might just help make your own progress more sustainable.
That's a great takeaway. Definitely food for thought. And if this has piqued your interest in conversational hypnosis and Virginie Imir's specific approach, her work is certainly worth exploring further for anyone interested in facilitating deep and lasting change.